Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. Okay, so we're completely skipping the usual agenda today because, well, I want to drop you right into the thick of it, literally. Imagine waking up, and for just a split second, you completely forget where you are. You're squeezed into this tiny metal bed that's barely bigger than you are. You've been out at sea for 47 straight days. Breakfast? Yeah, it tastes exactly like it did yesterday, and you gotta wolf it down because you're on watch in 20 minutes. This isn't some Hollywood movie. This is just a regular Tuesday. Today, we're diving deep into the massive, deeply interconnected machinery of the US military. And we aren't doing it through boring, abstract strategy. No way. We're looking at the sweat, the eyes, and the split-second decisions of the people actually living it.
So here's a question for you. What does it actually feel like to be the tip of the spear? I mean, it's one thing to look at these military branches as these giant, faceless institutions, right? But it's a completely different ballgame when you try to understand the actual human experience driving them. This right here is what sets the stage for our entire journey today. We're going to travel through all the interconnected domains of warfare, all the way from the deep oceans up into the freezing vacuum of space, and then right back to your own neighborhood. We're going to find out exactly how this colossal apparatus functions, one life at a time.
Part 1. Controlling the Sea. The United States Navy.
Okay, so when you finally step up on deck after that initial shock of waking up below, the wind just hits you differently. It's this distinct mix, smelling strongly of salt and jet fuel. You're out in the absolute middle of the Pacific Ocean. But the thing is, you are definitely not alone. 5,000. That is the population of the literal floating city you're standing on right now. 5,000 sailors, all working in complete sync to keep this colossal machine humming. Think about it. You've got a runway right in the middle of the ocean with aircraft prepped to launch at any given second. The whole point, the entire purpose of this floating behemoth is to park itself anywhere on the globe and project immense power for months on end. And the crazy part? It does all of this without ever touching land.
But let's zoom in a bit on your specific role here. Let's say you're an electrician. Every single wire, every mind-bendingly complex system, every light on this enormous ship, yeah, it all runs because people exactly like you keep it running. We're talking millions of parts and thousands of very specific jobs all uniting for one singular mission. Now, your job today probably seems exactly the same as it did yesterday, but then the ship's speaker crackles. You freeze. Actually, everyone freezes. New orders just came down. In a literal fraction of a second, 47 days of just routine nothingness abruptly shift into sudden, intense action.
Part 2. The Tip of the Spear. The United States Marine Corps.
Now, while the Navy is shifting into absolute high gear up above, down below deck, things are a little different. The ship lurches, and your stomach just kind of drops right along with it. You're packed into this stiflingly tight space with about 200 other Marines. It is incredibly hot, it's deafeningly loud, and the air is just thick with the smell of sweat and metal. Talk about a contrast, right? The Navy, they get the floating city with actual beds. The Marines, well, you get a corner of the floor and whatever sleep you can manage to literally steal. But honestly, that's perfectly fine with you, because you aren't there to be comfortable. The whole entire point of the Marine Corps is to be first. When the military needs to hit a location fast and hard, you are the ones who go. Your job is to control the chaos on the ground. You've spent 3 long days in this metal box just waiting. You've checked your gear so many times your hands basically move on autopilot. The rifle's clean, the magazines are fully loaded, boots are tied tight. The waiting is honestly the worst part of it all. But then the lieutenant walks in, and the room goes dead quiet. He looks around and says, "Listen up. We're hitting a beach at 0400. Navy's getting us close, the rest is on us." Boom. That is all you need. A time and a job. Your heart starts hammering a bit faster, and you look around at the faces beside you. You see some guys grinning, others silently praying. The waiting, it's finally over. Now comes the hard part.
Part 3. Miles ahead on ground. The United States Army.
Okay, shift gears with me for a second. The sun is barely even up, and it is already blisteringly hot. You haven't slept in 31 hours, and no, it's not because you can't sleep, it's because there is simply no time to. You're a cavalry scout. You strap 60 pounds of super heavy gear onto your body, gear that you've worn for so long, honestly, your body actually feels weird without it. Your sergeant barks at you to mount up, and you climb into the vehicle. Right now, everything comes down to this. 5 soldiers, 1 mission. Find out what's down that road. Now, the Army is the biggest branch out there, right? We're talking over 1 million people, tanks, helicopters, artillery, the whole shebang. But out here, right now, none of that matters. It all just boils down to this one single truck driving down a seriously bad road. Because somewhere out there, something is waiting. And your one job is to find it before it finds you.
Part 4. Guardian Angels Above. The United States Air Force. Now those Army scouts down there, they aren't entirely alone. But man, the contrast here is just staggering. Down on the ground, as we just saw, it's this gritty, totally exhausted combat. But up here, it's clean, it's incredibly quiet, and the world just looks like a giant map. See, you aren't actually up in the sky. You're a sensor operator on a drone, sitting in a nice, climate-controlled room in Nevada, thousands of miles away, flying a plane through a satellite link. You're essentially keeping an eye on that Army convoy from above. So here's how it plays out. Step 1. You spot a suspicious truck pulling off a side road about 300 meters north. Step 2. You zoom in and identify the threat. 2 men get out and they're carrying shovels. They're planting an IED, an improvised explosive device. You press a button. Step 3. 8 seconds later, your screen flashes white and the IED is eliminated. And finally, step 4, that Army convoy rolls right past that exact spot 20 minutes later, completely safe. They didn't even have to slow down. From half a world away, you just saved their lives. I really want you to think about the profound, almost surreal reality of this job. Imagine driving a Honda Civic to war, and then turning around and driving it home for dinner. Just think about the absolute psychological whiplash of that. In 4 hours, your shift's gonna end, you're gonna stand up, walk out to the parking lot, hop back into that Civic, and drive home to sit at the dinner table with your family. Somehow, someway, you have to find a way to be both of those people at exactly the same time. It's wild.
Part 5. The Invisible Space War. The United States Space Force.
So how exactly is that drone operator in Nevada actually talking to a drone on the complete opposite side of the planet? Well, as an operator here in the Space Force, your uniform is absolutely pristine, you've got great air conditioning, maybe even a working coffee machine right down the hall, but make no mistake, your responsibility is staggering. You're actively managing a $2 billion machine. It's roughly the size of a school bus, floating 200 miles above the Earth and casually moving at 17,000 miles per hour. Because here's the reality. If you mess up your job today, the Marines completely lose their GPS. That Army unit we talked about, they lose their communication on that dangerous road. The Air Force loses their targeting capabilities. The Space Force isn't just another branch. It is literally the absolute linchpin of the entire modern military apparatus. People might think the Space Force is some sort of punchline, but let me tell you, absolutely nobody is laughing when their screens go totally dark.
Then, suddenly, your screen blinks. One of your satellites is getting messed with. And no, it's not just a glitch, it is signal jamming. A hostile foreign signal is actively trying to sever those invisible lines we just talked about. This right here is the invisible war happening right now, 24/7, with adversaries like Russia and China constantly fighting over frequencies. So, your fingers start flying across the keyboard, rapidly rerouting the signal and adjusting the encryption. You handle it. Crisis averted. Now, you won't get any front-page headlines or flashy medals for this, but because of you, a Navy sailor's radar stays crystal clear, a soldier's radio actually works when they call for backup, and an Air Force pilot successfully locks onto their target. You ensure the rest of the entire military survives to fight another day.
Part 6. Fighting Battles at Home. The National Guard.
Finally, let's snap right back to civilian reality. You aren't overseas anymore. At 0 hours on our timeline here, you're just standing in line at your local hardware store, buying some drywall screws. You're probably just thinking about fixing up your kitchen. You're an electrician Monday through Friday, you coach your kids' soccer team on the weekends, you live a completely, perfectly normal life. And then, your phone buzzes in your pocket. Just 20 minutes later, you've received your activation orders. And by hour 12, your entire reality has shifted. You are no longer an electrician, you're strapped into a Humvee rolling through your own home state. Except, it doesn't really look like home anymore. A massive hurricane has hit, the power grid is totally out, and there is freezing, fast-moving floodwater absolutely everywhere. You're pulling a stranded family off their roof using a rope, fighting these intense currents that absolutely do not care about your rescue training. It is just a completely chaotic, high-stakes dual life.
You finally get the family down safely into the Humvee. The mother won't stop crying, and the father just keeps repeating, "Thank you, thank you." Because the real truth of the Guard is this. You aren't fighting enemies overseas, you're fighting whatever shows up right at home. Sitting there in that freezing Humvee, the rescued baby just stares up at you, wide-eyed, almost like you're some kind of superhero from another planet. You deployed, sure, but you deployed to your own backyard, seamlessly stitching the life of a civilian and a soldier into one single, exhausted breath.
Wow. Okay, so we've traveled all the way from the salt and jet fuel of a massive aircraft carrier down into the stifling heat of a marine hold. We've driven down a highly dangerous dirt road with the Army, stepped into the quiet but lethal control rooms of the Air Force and Space Force, and finally braved the freezing floodwaters alongside the National Guard. It is a massive, completely interconnected 24/7 machine that is operating around you invisibly at all times.
So I want to leave you with this final, truly provocative thought to chew on. Looking at everything we've just unpacked in this explainer today, which role in this incredible machine do you think you would be best suited for? Thank you so much for joining me on this journey, and as always, keep learning.